Hi, this is Mike of Black Cat Amplification. I've got a special video here today. I wanted to do a quick demo for you. This is the Hot Mod V2 made by LegandaryTones, which is basically a little device that you can plug into a tube socket on your Marshall amp. Typically these are designed for Marshalls. And it adds an extra couple gain stages here. So you see the extra 2 preamp tubes. I'm not promoting LegandaryTones, but I think they make a killer device here. This is the V2 version. I know they've got other versions. So in this case, I'm only saying that this is going to work with a Hot Mod V2 and a SOVTEK MIG60. A lot of people are like, wait a minute, they designed this for Marshall circuits. Well, they did. And I've tried this in a lot of other amps just to see if it would work, and it failed, except for this one. And it adds a ton of gain to a SOVTEK MIG60. As long as it's the standard version, it hasn't been modified in any way. It should work. At least it does here for mine. And this is definitely an unmodded version of the SOVTEK. It's pretty stock. Only things that have been changed are filter caps and some tubes. But I've gone through the circuit. I build amps. I've done some maintenance on this thing. Everything's original except for the filter caps and tubes. So this thing is really cool. You put it in the V2, the second tube preamp tube position, and essentially it goes in here and it makes their basically 2 tubes in 1 slot, right? And inside of this, I'm sure there's some plethora of resistors and capacitors and different things to basically add a whole extra, probably 1 or 2, I would imagine at least 2 gain stages in this thing. So this is a really cool device. It works really well with the MIG60. And what I'm going to do is demo playing through the amp, basically having most of the controls here set at close to noon. I like the presence, bass and treble just a little past noon, and the middle just a tiny bit below noon on this particular demo. I'm not going to change any of that. I've got the master volume up around 3 or 4, and I'm just going to play with the preamp volume. This preamp volume is pretty much where you get all your gain from in this particular amp, and I'm only going to be demoing on the high gain channel. There's a low gain and a high gain channel. So we're going to see how much gain does this SOVTEK MIG60 put out by itself, and then how much more gain is it going to put out with this Hot Mod V2 installed. So just to show you what my setup is here, so there's no confusion, I'm doing this quick. I'm not going to mic up a speaker cabinet. I've got a 2 Notes Captor X. This is a really cool device if you're not familiar with it. It's pretty new to me. I'm just learning it. But essentially what it'll allow you to do is plug in your speaker out from your amp, tube amp, directly into this box. And it provides an 8 ohm load for the amp, and it goes in through an interface into your computer, and there's software that emulates different speaker cabinets and microphones and things like the brands and the sizes of the speakers and how many speakers. You can do placement of the microphones on the speaker itself. So it's really cool. It's really flexible. I tried to just kind of pick something pretty basic, but I'll show you what I have going on here. I have on one side, on one channel, a Mesa Boogie 412 cabinet, and this is an impulse response. Of course, it's a virtual cabinet, but these things sound so much like real cabinets. It's unbelievable. So this is mic'd up with like a Sennheiser 421 mic, and then on the other side, I've got another 412 cabinet. So essentially, it's like us playing through a full stack, right? But just splitting one cabinet on one side and one on the other side, and this is a Celestion G12T75, also with a Sennheiser 412 mic. So there's a little tiny bit of gate on this, because when you do get up into the high gain territory, especially with this thing installed, there's a little bit of hiss, and I just wanted to kind of cut that out so you can hear the tone of it itself and how much more gain it's giving. So it's just a little tiny bit of gate and a tiny bit of reverb, and it's just like a studio room reverb, just to give it some depth in the sound. So very similar to me actually miking something up, but I can't do that right now. I've got neighbors home and stuff, and if I did that, I'd be getting the cops called on me. So let's do this. I'm not going to change any settings here. We're going to play this amp a little bit, and I'm going to increase the gain on the preamps channel here, doing different stages, and then we're going to stop, and then I'm going to put the Hot Mod in, and I'm going to show you how it's installed in here. And we're going to do the same thing, and we'll see that pretty much, like from my experience just doing this a little while ago, if I crank this gain all the way up without this installed, and you put this thing in, it's almost like you're starting at like 2 again, 2 or 3 actually. So you'll get that much more gain with this thing installed. Another thing is this particular model. I don't know if this is going to work with other models, because I know that Legendary Tones is making more upgraded models. I bought this about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. But it does have a little boost switch here. And I'm assuming what that probably does is just add another gain stage from one of these tubes. So I'm going to do it with that engaged, just to show you how much gain when this is on full blast. But even with this switch down and off, it's still a ton more gain than this. But I'm going to put it on basically the maximum amount of gain that this can put out, and we're going to control that level of gain using the preamp volume. All right, so let's do it. Let's do a quick demo just to let you hear what the amp sounds like without this installed in stages. And let's hear that. Okay, and here's how we install the HotMod V2 into our Sovtek MIG60. So I'm going to put these tube shields back on. It's probably a good idea that they're on, probably, I mean, just because sometimes not only do they protect the tubes, but sometimes they can shield out certain signals and electromagnetics that may happen to get into the tubes to be amplified. So I'm just going to put those on and take the second tube out of the second preamp position. There's 1, 2, and 3. So when you hear V2, that means valve 2, which is tube number 2. All right. So what this little dangly thing is actually a secondary ground on the device. So it's actually being grounded here against the tube shield, right? The tube socket, the bottom part of the shield. It's this little nut screws it in to hold it in place. But then this is like a secondary ground. And I just put that anywhere on any part of the metal of the chassis, which basically, you know, helps to filter out any excess noise so that it has a good constant connection to ground, right? And ground is basically just the bare metal on the chassis, right? In layman's terms. So I've got the boost switch up, and I'm going to put this in to the socket. And on this amp, it is a little, you know, I didn't think it would fit with the height here, but it does work if you angle it properly. So what I'm doing here is basically getting it into position. And oh, one other thing I wanted to show you. You can rotate this slightly if it needs to be moved. You can rotate this, but you want to be really careful because I'm sure there's wires and things that could potentially become dislodged. So it does rotate slightly enough that you should be able to get it in there. Okay, sorry about that. I stopped the video because it was taking me a minute to get this in there. I needed some extra light to see where it was going, but it's now pushed down securely into the tube socket. And what I like to do here is this little nut to tighten it to hold it in place is also going to probably provide it with a primary ground, and then I'm assuming this is secondary. And really, I'm just attaching this somewhere on the metal chassis. I like to do it right here on these little for the power tubes on the spring clamps that hold them in place. That's good enough because they're actually screwed directly to the chassis. And that's it. So once it's installed, we'll flip it on and we'll take a listen to the gain. as you can see, a lot more gain on tap. It actually even gets up into almost fuzzy territories when you start getting up past like 9 o'clock here, or sorry, 3 o'clock. But yeah, I mean, I think it sounds great just halfway up. It seems like it adds a lot more crunch to the sound. Now you're hearing it through the audio on my phone here, but just to give you an idea. That's a ton of gain just right there, you know, at halfway. And of course, it'll work on the low input as well. It's just going to be less gain. It's almost like when you have it in the low input and you get it close to the top, that's about where it is when it's cranked all the way up on the high gain without the hot mod installed. Right now the hot mod is installed and on. So go back to the high. So pretty cool little thing to add gain to your SOVTEK MIG60. Again, this I've tried in a MIG50, I've tried in a 2 different MIG100, and it doesn't work in those circuits. You'll just basically get no sound at all, or noise or something like that. It's not really designed for SOVTEKs, but I just wanted to show that even though LegandaryTones has a list of Marshall amps that they support this in, it will also work in the MIG60. So if you have one, get the hot mod if you want more gain. It's pretty cool. Me personally, if I was going to be doing something like hair metal, I always like to have a tube screamer in front of it. So, and in that case, I would really need to cut the gain way back here anyway to kind of clean it up. But I can show you that real quick. So I basically have like a clone type of tube screamer sort of preamp gain turned on right now. And that's even a little too much gain, I think. Matter of fact, probably would sound pretty good with that installed and in the low input, so it's a little less fuzzy and crisp it up a bit. Yeah, right there. Pretty awesome. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was kind of lengthy. I didn't edit it very well. I don't have a ton of time, but a lot of people wanted to hear what this thing sounded like. Of course, you could get a lot more tones out of it depending on the speakers you're using. Again, this is really just using the 2 notes box, emulating a couple different speaker cabs, but you know, try it with different speakers. It may sound, you know, much more crisp or a lot bassier depending on what cabinet you're using. I do believe that the cabinet has probably almost the most influence on the sound of an amp, especially with when it gets driven to really loud volumes. You know, the speakers make a huge difference in what that amp can sound like. So it's a cool amp, very very neat amp. It doesn't have a ton of gain on tap. Add this Legendary Tones and you know, it's pretty beefy. So hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks.